Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hanging Hour, episode 103. I am here with E.L. is it Montague or Montague?
Montague.
Montague. All right.
Yeah.
I do know how that's pronounced because of Shakespeare, but I wanted to be sure.
It is the same family they were writing about. At least that's the way my dad tells the story.
But yes, he is a writer of fantasy, science fiction, dark speculative fiction, is I think what it says on your Twitter account. Glad to have you today.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Um, you are among the crowd of booktubers I watch. So happy to get to the other side of the screen.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Really, I am. It's always nice to talk with. It's always nice talking to people and indie authors as well.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Why booktube? You know what? Yeah, I know you're going to talk to me, but let me talk to you.
All right.
You made a choice to get on camera and talk about books, and what brought you here?
um, what brought me here? Well, I wanted to do. I did a booktube channel a while back. But the videos on that were really bad, and I got rid of a lot of them because I don't really think they're that great. But um, I finally got back to it because I I didn't want to do it for a long time because I generally I tend to ramble a lot, and then I watched Brian Lee Durfee. And I'm like, all right, I have no excuse whatsoever. This guy's just, sitting around on his, it's on his phone and just bullshitting about books for 20 minutes. I could do that too. So here I
Yeah,
am. it was it
well, that's
was
great.
it was a
I
long
mean, that's
journey.
good.
And a lot of people were like,
What?
"Britton, you should do this cuz you have a lot of opinions and you're very passionate about this stuff." And I'm like,
All right,
"All
I'm going to
right.
ask another question. Why Britty Ryan on Twitter?
Britty Ryan?
Yeah, on Twitter, when you look at your name, it's Britty.
Oh, it's a play on Tyrion Lannister. I just added my name to the.
Tyrion.
Yeah. I'm like, what? Oh, that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just pay attention.
I'm a big fan of that character, so I thought it'd be kind of funny to try and combine my name with Tyrion's. Did
With
it work?
Tyrion.
I'm not sure. It looked pretty good when
See,
I.
I
It
I
looked pretty good when I put it together, but you never
well,
know.
if it had been Brit dash Tyrion, I would have got it. But
Oh
it was
well, yeah.
because I read Britty and then Ryan, and I wasn't
Yeah,
making the
my
connection.
name's Britton.
I gathered as much. I gathered as
Yeah,
much.
that's or well, my name's right there. So
And so everybody who
right,
follows him on Twitter, you now know how come it says Brit Tyrion.
yeah.
There
Um,
we go.
yeah.
Well, I'm down with a little bit of Mr. Martin, GRR.
I do
He
like
is a
him.
great writer.
He is a very good writer. I wish he'd
I'd
finish
like him
those
to be a
damn
great
books, but
finisher.
yeah,
Yeah,
can't all
yeah.
get what we want. I actually saw him posting about, or I think he was on his blog today talking about, it's been a hard year, and it has been a hard
I
year.
saw him getting a lot of crap online today for a master of excuse writing. Um, but he's
Um,
his prose is actually I like his story construction, the way he pulls a story together from 100 different ways. Complexity's always been interesting to me.
Yeah, I think what I really like, I've only read Game of Thrones and a couple of his short stories. I read Sand Kings a while back, which is like a grittier. It reminds me a lot of Ray Bradbury, if Ray Bradbury were a little grittier. Um,
So here's a secret to creators, and this goes for you too, because you just said you took a bunch of your stuff offline because it wasn't up to your current standard. Everybody, all of the authors are like that, except for people who are at the end of their career. They may have hit a peak and they're sliding, but everybody's better today than they were yesterday.
it's true.
And you got to think about George Martin as uh, he was a very respectable mid-lister through the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't until somebody picked up a book he wrote in the 90s in the 2000s and said, hey, this would make a really cool, late evening show on HBO, that he really rocketed.
Yeah, and then all the drama that came from that.
I
uh,
actually suspect that he would have finished the series if he hadn't hit the popularity.
yeah, you
Um,
know what? I actually agree with you on that. I really do wonder, like, what if? Because I know George was, because I've seen documentaries of George hanging out and doing his thing, and I know for a while he was very resistant on doing adaptations of his work, because he was very he was pleased with the fact that he could write novels and do whatever the hell he wanted. Well, I say that loosely. Mostly do whatever he
right,
wants.
right.
I'm sure they edited down and like George, get rid of all these fluff words. All that.
Well, any kind of publisher is going to have their say, but what I suspect is, I mean, so just being somebody who writes, when you think about your day, first thing is you got to pay for your day. You got to earn your daily bread, put a roof over your head, and all the rest of that. Then you have to cut out a piece of time to write. And if all of a sudden your writing becomes your profession, you get more time and you can write a lot. But then if all of a sudden your work takes on a life of its own and you're obligated to market and be present, and you have to watch over the set, and you've got all these responsibilities in your day that aren't writing,
Oh yeah, and I
so
mean, George does other things too. Like he does the wild card things. He's helping to run the TV stuff, and
well, yeah, and
I've
that's
heard
what I'm
he's
saying
not.
is
I've
that
heard
it
he's not
it
very.
pulls away from that time. Like I tell my wife, when people interrupt while you're writing, it takes about, any interruption, a 30-second interruption is a 20-minute delay in your writing.
Ha!
And
Yeah.
if you get an hour a day that you can write reliably, three interruptions and you've done nothing the day.
Yeah, I mean, but kind of going back to what I like about George R. R. Martin, I really like, especially in Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, because that's what it's actually called.
Right.
Game of Thrones is just what they managed to call the show.
I
I
think
guess it
Game of
just had a.
Thrones was that the first book
Yeah, that's the first
or
book. Yeah, A Game of Thrones is
right?
the first book as well. But I guess it just had a nicer ring to it. But I really like in that series how he comments on the fantasy genre, in a lot of the tropes and stuff
Right.
in that series, which I've talked about a bit. Um, I'm actually hoping to do a sort of conversation video like this at some point with some friends of mine, kind of clearing up what Game of Thrones is actually about, because I find a lot of people misunderstand its actual meaning, and just kind of get lost in the what's the surface level, if you will.
You want to do a preview? What do you think it is?
Um, well, I
Just to
think.
put you on the spot.
Well, no, it's fine. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, so it's fine. I can talk about it. Um, really, my thesis is I find a lot of people really look at the series from a surface level, which is prone to happen when you gain popularity. You get this popular conception of your work.
Right.
It's happened to Tolkien, it's happened to Heinlein, it's happened to every author, rather they be in speculative fiction or not. Um, but really, my kind of thought process is Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire. I'm more used to calling it Game of Thrones. Well, one, it's a commentary on the fantasy genre. For one, it's kind of I like to compare it a lot to Watchmen, just in terms of um, the structure and also just how it comments on what came before, and the tropes and why these are the case. But really, I think about Game of Thrones, and I think that the main theme that a lot of people miss is that your actions have consequences, which
Right.
is like, yeah, sure. But, you know, a lot of people think of George's writing and they think, oh, it's just a series where people get punished for doing the right thing and you have to be an evil, conniving bastard to make it. And that's partly true. I think, you know, that's partly the case. That's definitely an aspect of his work. But he showcases that your actions will define how you will be remembered, because there's a lot of themes of legacy. Am I making sense to you? You seem
Oh,
kind
you're
of
totally
you,
making
you see
sense.
I see the wires working in your brain, so I was just kind of like,
Well,
am I
the
making
thing
sense?
about the thing about what I like about the way he tells a story is, and it's a scope thing,
Mm-hmm.
is that his stories are across the long arc of A Song of Ice and Fire. And not every action that affects you is something you did. You know,
Sure.
so when
Yeah.
you think about the broad world and all the different stories that are going on, something that happens on the wall last book becomes relevant, you know, in why am I spacing on the name of the city?
King's Landing.
King's Landing becomes relevant in King's Landing
Oh.
a book later,
Yeah.
you
That
know,
that.
and it not even done by the same characters, but they relate. So what's happening with Daenerys on the mainland and what's happening on the shore and what's happening, you know, everybody has their goals and objectives that push and pull everybody else's. You know, best laid plans and all the rest of that. And so what I enjoy about the story, I wasn't really thinking of it the way that you're thinking about it. I was thinking of it more in line that he was managing the push and pull of all the different storylines and how they affected each other. And I think George Martin does that really, really well. Um, so,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, and there's also a lot of themes about, like, you know, power and how to wield power, and, you know, Machiavellianism is kind of a theme in it, I guess, for lack of a
yeah,
better word. Legacy is a big theme because, you know, you hear about the, you know, I often like to contrast, like, Ned and Tywin, for instance. You know,
right.
they are both opposite in terms of temperament and philosophy, and just in general, they're basically
Well, yeah,
opposites.
and the Lannisters were more. I don't want to say cutthroat. They were more cutthroat. Um,
More
they were
suited.
more willing to do the difficult thing to keep. They had a very clear sense of where they wanted to be, whereas Ned Stark had a very and all the Starks have a very strong sense of who they want to be. The
Well, I would
Lannisters
say
had a very
conscience,
strong
but
sense of
that's
where they wanted to be.
but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I would say conscience or morality, but yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Right, right, right.
And you know, you
Yeah.
see, and I think it's interesting, because you know a lot of people rag on Ned for, you know, what he does in the book, what he does in
For
A Game
being a
of
little bit of
Thrones.
an uptight Ned Flanders type.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's funny you bring that up. And a lot of people are, you know, I'm honestly, I mean, I get it on some level because, you know, people respect competence, and also Charles Dance was just freaking amazing as Tywin Lannister, easily an all timer performance. But I'm really
Tywin
shocked how
Lannister
many
is one of the
people.
best characters.
I am really shocked how many people give him the benefit of the doubt, because George is very unambiguous that this is an evil, monstrous person.
Was he?
Yeah, I think he was.
Nah. Cold. He was cold. He was efficient.
He
But
ordered
he
the
had a
gang
very
rape
clear
of a
sense of
16-year-old girl. That is monstrous as far as I'm concerned. But I see
what
what
did
you're
you
coming
say it
from.
again?
I was about to say he ordered the gang rape of a 16-year-old girl. That is monstrous as far as I'm concerned.
So the action itself was monstrous. The order itself was monstrous, but he wasn't his action, and that's the thing you have to think about when you think about Tywin Lannister. He was not thinking about individual morality. He was thinking about the objective. All of his
I'll give you
actions
that.
were,
I agree with
I'm
that.
gonna do this to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
from that perspective, and in the context of his world, because remember, there was nobody walking around telling him he couldn't be who he was. He couldn't run the Lannister family. His children couldn't become the kings. None of that was going to happen for being amoral.
Yeah, he's
But if he didn't
like he's the
control the
ultimate
environment,
cutthroat, like Machiavellian, really.
oh yeah. Well,
But
I mean,
but I find
we
he's
talk about
undone, of course, by being too ruthless, of course. Because
we talk
finally,
about Machiavelli though because all the princes of Florentine followed the process of Mr. Machiavelli.
yeah, exactly,
You've
yeah.
read The Prince, right?
I mean, I know of it. I haven't read the whole. I've actually no.
It,
I've read.
it's little bitty. It's like 60
I remember
pages.
reading it with a group once, and I actually want to read
Well,
it
okay, so
again at some
it's
point. But I know of it. I know what it
older
is.
English translated from Northern Italian from the 1500s or whenever it was. But just like reading Sun Tzu's Art of War or the Book of Five Rings or any of those, if you get past the language and you just listen to the stories, they're actually really effective tales. And if you just
Mm-hmm.
listen to what they're saying and translate it into the modern world, and then if you mix in a little bit of Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, um, it's good information. I highly recommend you read The Prince, The Book of Five Rings, The Art of War, Andrew Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and actually Rich Dad Poor Dad, the original one way back when nobody knew who that guy was. But and then combine those lessons.
But
It's worthwhile.
it's kind of interesting because um, I find that Ned kind of wins the battle of legacy because you know he was a
Does he?
I think so. I mean
He wins the battle of our hearts in stories. But if you assume that those characters are real beings in their real world, his family was wiped out.
sure, but there's still people who are willing to risk their lives or worse in order to save his children or who they think is his
Well, but
children.
that's what I'm saying is Ned Stark is dead. His wife is dead.
Well,
We have at the end,
well,
we only have
kind of.
Sansa, Arya,
If we're
and well,
talking
yeah, I
books,
think she's the Red Widow. Uh, does he actually ever say that?
I thought we already know that she was Lady Stoneheart. I don't know.
Lady
I
Stoneheart.
haven't
That's right.
I haven't read it in a while. I'm actually wanting to do a reread again, see
Yeah,
if it
I
holds
haven't
up.
read it since. When did the last book that he actually wrote came out?
I think when the
Because
show started,
I read that
2011.
within like a week of it releasing, and that was the last time I've touched it.
Oh wow.
So it's been 15 years, maybe. I don't know.
Um,
Anyway,
but yeah, no, but my getting to what I'm the point I'm making is it's ultimately about how your actions have consequences for good or ill. Ned
for real,
tried to
yeah,
do the right thing, but unfortunately, he was in a world that, well, he was in a setting, King's Landing anyway, that, really doesn't care what right or wrong is.
that's for sure.
And,
And I'm not defending the Lannisters over the Starks in
oh
this
no, I
because
know.
if we think about this, the Lannisters are also all wiped out.
Yeah, and I mean, in Tywin, goes out because he was too ruthless, so it's kind of, it's an
Eh,
interesting balance, one dies
If
because
he
he
had
was too
been
good, and one
if he
died
had been
because he
a
was too
better
evil.
father, he would have won.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
If you keep all the bastard and you just make him a little better father, everything he does to the rest of the world, fine. But he's does a better job of stewarding the growth of his children. Tyrion wouldn't have shot him on the toilet. Um, Cersei wouldn't have been such an insane person. Um,
uh,
so anyway,
like
so we got way
her
off track
talent for self
on
delusion
George Martin.
is
All
quite
right, so as
impressive.
long as we did George Martin, what's your take on Rothfuss?
I haven't read Rothfuss yet. I do want to at
You
some
have
point.
not read Rothfuss.
I know. It's one of
Okay,
those
so I'm just going
popular.
to say this. I'm not going to say it for the whole King Killer series. For one thing, the third book, still waiting. Um, I can't remember what it's
I would
called,
think
but
that you
anyway,
would think that Patrick Rothfuss would have an easier time. There's no big adaptation, and also it's one book you have to write left. But I digress. I know how
he
hard.
built himself into a corner for pressure. Some people, everybody handles their challenges differently, and he created for himself a monster in the fact that, and I'll say this in a really careful way, when I read it, and I have not read it in about 10, 12 years, but The Name of the Wind is perhaps one of the best written books I've ever read.
Yeah, I that's what I've heard a lot of kind of polarizing things. Like I've heard like a lot of people go, first book's great, second book, eh. I've heard people go, oh, it's just wish fulfillment bullshit, and I'm like, I don't know.
Go into it with an open mind, just read it. Part of the challenge that you have is that it came out at the same time as Harry Potter craze. And so everybody was into these school things. And Harry Potter was kind of at the peak. And
Mm.
then you get this school story that's grown up, and people try to draw those comparisons, and they're not the same beast at all.
Yeah, I heard there's like an
Harry Potter
unreliable
was Harry
narrator
Potter.
bit in it, which is, I'm like, oh, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. But the name of the wind, very well done. Incredible prose, really well written, complex story. Loved it. Very disappointed that we haven't gotten the third book, and truthfully, kind of. Well, I'm just going to go with disappointed. I lost a little bit of faith because it was like I was comfortable waiting 5 years, but now that we're up to like 10, 12 years since the last one, which again I can't remember the name of it. This is Name of the Wind. My wife. So you want to know something crazy? If you look at my shelves there, you see how all the colors are done. My
Yeah.
wife rearranges the books on my shelf so that they look the way she wants them to look. The books aren't together. The only ones that are together is you see the red ones up at the top
Yeah.
are a collection, and then you can't see it, but right behind Mike Molman's book here,
Uh-huh.
I have the Aubrey Matrin series, and those are all together. But everything else, I've got Harry Potter spread all over the place.
Oh,
I've
that is
got the Wheel of
bizarre.
Time spread all over the place,
Huh, that is
and
weird.
it is weird. But she looks at the spines and then she lines them up, and I try to put them back together, and she'll come through and fix the books so that it's got a pattern that she likes, and it's whatever. She gets to run the house. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, all right,
Um,
yeah. No, it's
yeah,
but
yeah.
I haven't read Rothfuss, unfortunately. That's one of my blind spots.
You read Scott Lynch,
I have, yeah. Liza
The
Locklemore
Gentleman Bastards?
was my
Love that
favorite.
story.
That was my favorite book of last year.
You only read it last year.
Yeah,
I forget you're a young guy.
I read all three last year. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. The Liza Locklemore, um, I
So
really
good.
admire that kind of storytelling.
It's so good. Like it was just like it took a minute to get going. I was like, all right, this is fun. It's a little scrappy little team of thieves,
A
and
little
then
scrappy, a little dark, gives us a little bit of a Ocean's 11 mystery thing.
yeah,
It's
and
a very imaginative city, the glass spires and all that, and the way that the magic works. It's
oh yeah,
just good
for sure.
stuff.
And like yeah, there's like big shark fights. You're like, oh, that's cool. And there's like this underworld thing. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then it
I,
turns
I,
into
I
this like really satisfying revenge story. And
yep.
I ended up meeting one of the most loathsome characters I have ever read in The Falconer. Ugh,
Oh,
hate that
oh,
guy. Man, let me tell you, this got a five. This book, that book. Hold on, let me pull it out. This
no, go
literally
ahead.
got a 5 star when they get revenge on the Falconer. Like it, just one of the most satisfying revenge scenes I have ever seen. I have ever encountered. I will say.
Yeah, so that kind of makes one of those things. What do you get your enjoyment out of books? So I like complexity. I like a little bit of grit, a little bit of dark, um, and you can get a good rating out of me by either making me want to spend time with your words just because it feels good to be there, or jerking me around all over the place and then making me happy with what you've done with that. Like Robin Hobb beats you up, but she does something that, it's a satisfactory end. Brandon Sanderson has good, consistent product. It drives through. They're easy to follow. You know,
Yeah,
Patrick Rothfuss. I love spending time with his words, even though I'm really irritated that I don't have a finish because he is such a good writer.
I'm also a bit irritated with the lack of Gentleman Bastards content, though I have heard from the horse's mouth that there may be new stuff coming out soon. So,
Really,
yeah, we'll see. I
we'll
did
see.
hear.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm on the we'll see, but I was a little let down with the Republic of Thieves because there were a lot of lows in
Yeah,
that book. Now, a lot of people were hating on the love story. I actually liked the love story. Like, you can call me I mean, you can say I'm a bit sentimental, and you would probably be true, and you would probably be right. But, like, it wasn't bad. Like, it was a nice, like, it was a very believably complicated romance, I thought.
I, you're not going to hear me complain about a romance story.
Um,
I,
Now,
yeah,
what I thought was irritating is they took out one of the things. There's like 100 pages in the book. He drops the most blatant, poorly thought out Deus Ex Machina you can think of, and just completely kills the tension from the last book. Because man, that last book had some great tension in it, and you know why I read the lies of, you know why I read the Gentleman Bastards? I want to see Locke and John get into a bizarre situation where how the hell are they going to get out of it? He takes out a part of that because he literally gives them a way out and then goes, all right, here's this weird political story with no tension
yeah.
whatsoever because,
There's
reasons.
nothing wrong with the weird political story. It's that he didn't give us enough breadcrumbs to get there. I can't remember who said it, but someone relevant said the key to a good, it's really the key to a good twist, but the key to a good story is that when you get them to the end and everybody says there's no way out of this, and then you get them out of it, everybody goes, oh yeah, I totally knew that was going to happen. It's, if you get to the end and they're convinced you can't do it, and then when you solve it, you've got all the pieces,
Like,
and you're like, oh,
I'll
well,
put
of
it
course
this
that's how
way,
it's
like, what I look for when one of the things I look for when I consume a story is, like, I want to be in the world with the characters. And when there is a thing, like I just mentioned, kind of blatant Deus Ex Machina, it takes me out of the story, and that makes me very displeased. So,
So I'm going to ask an odd question.
alright.
I have a son. He's down the hall, but I just heard Motley Crue come on. Are you hearing Motley Crue?
No?
Okay, then I won't go yell at him.
I do not hear Motley Crue.
Um, yeah. So, what's your best read of 2024? And I know I'm
Um,
totally interviewing you, but that's okay. Let's keep going.
so far it is Kindred by Octavia Butler,
Octavia Butler.
which is a brilliant book about one of America's darkest parts. Um, and it was my only 5-star read until I read Lonesome Dove, which I thought was a
Cool.
brilliant book.
Lonesome Dove.
I'm sure you really enjoy it. I see the Texas car sign back there. So
Yep. And
you
I
guys
haven't
are
even
just
given
you
you
guys are
crap
just
about the
you guys
Sooners
are
up
just
there.
you guys are just spoiled for content out there. I'm kind of envious as an Oklahoman.
Oh, Oklahoma's got lots to talk about.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we have the outsiders.
You've got the Outsiders. You've got Sooner football.
That's true.
You've
Yeah.
got you've got a mix of the Ozarks and the prairies, and you got the oil and Phillips 66. You got lots to talk about.
Yeah. No, but I read Lonesome Dove. I really loved it. That's one of those I sometimes joke. It's one of those. Everyone and their grandma told me to go read that book, and I'm like, all right. So I got it for Christmas last year, and I read it in July, and I was like, man, this is great. It's a really good book. I really liked the. There's like one moment in there I was kind of like, but aside from that, it was great.
So you write too, right? You're not just a booktuber. You're also a writer.
I am, yeah. I've written a novel. I haven't published it yet. I'm actually trying to edit it right now, or do some more editing. I did the first edit. Now I'm trying to do the second edit. But yes, I do write.
That's good. That's good. And I tell you what. So the way I tell people the story is, it's a series of leaps of faith. You have to have the courage to choose to start. You know, to write that first sentence, and then you have to be able to write the first page, and then you have to be able to write the first chapter, and then you have to finish a story. Because every time, like, you write that first sentence, you're like, oh, this, you're like, I'm a genius, until you read the sentence out loud, and you're like, God, I'm an idiot. You know, and then you
Let me tell
struggle
you
with
right
it. Maybe
now,
learn how to
what I did when I
make
wrote
it.
my first novel, I just started cranking and I didn't stop because I'm like, if
Yep.
I stop for a second and try to nitpick this, I will never finish this damn thing.
Yep. Yep. That is one of the challenges. But you did get to the end, and you've now read it, and you've gone through the experience of, oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. And when I finished it, I was like, man, I'm actually kind of proud of this. And then I sent it off to a good friend of mine who very kindly edited it for me, and just found everything that was not up to snuff. And I'm like, wow, there was a lot of stupid crap in this.
The first time you get back an editor or a beta, or a reader, the first time you get it back, it's like getting kicked in the balls for 300 pages.
It's just so. Oh man, it was. I mean, it was great. I had a fun time talking with him about it. But I was like, man, like, ugh. And
Yeah.
he's like,
Well, if you want another Western that can
there
tell you a
was
lot about structure,
there was so much
it's
sighing. Like, I didn't think there was that many sighs, but oh my gosh, like he turned it into a drinking game. I'm like, oh, please don't. But anyway,
yeah. Everybody has I sigh a lot. My people smile and look all the time. Look
yeah.
and smile.
He's like, bro, if I see Psy in your next copy, like, more than like 3 times, I'm giving you it back, and you're gonna edit it again. And I'm like, all right, fine.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, everybody has their tick. You read any big
I
author,
don't know.
any
The characters in my
them.
book are tired. This is kind of a. I mean, it's not. I don't consider it grim dark per se, but it's dark fantasy where it's in this. It's in kind of a mock 17th century. Everyone's tired.
Right.
People sigh. But whatever. I'm
Well,
not mad about
what
that.
it
And
is
I'll
is
admit, when I went through it, I'm like, wow, I did sigh a lot. I gotta get rid of a lot of this stuff.
it's less of a big deal than you think. Yes, you want some variety in your word usage, and if everybody's sighing all the time, then perhaps there's another emotion you need to talk about. But the core of storytelling is being clear. If you have a story to tell, if anybody can pick up your book and read it and understand what's happening, you've made a big step. And because some books I get, I start into them and I read them, and it's like I DNF books all the time because it's too hard.
I
You're
read
reading the book and you're like, oh God, this is so hard to read.
I read my friend Joe Burns' book. I read his high. Do you know Joe Burns?
Yeah, he's the Hyperion, not the Hyperion. He's the space guy fights a shark. Space guy fights a dinosaur.
I actually just read the one where he fights the sharks. It was very good, actually. I was like, wow, this is. I thought this would be kind of silly and tongue in cheek, but it's really good. But anyway.
Yeah, it's something Helix, right?
Yeah, the hybrid Helix. Yeah.
Hybrid Helix.
He's reading. I was reading one of the books. I won't say which, but like, there's one part where he said he opened the odor, and I'm like, so it happens to the best of us as well. But I didn't. I'm like, should I give him shit about this? No.
Yes, you should absolutely give him shit about this. Just always give him shit. There's a difference between a motor and an engine.
I'll just be like,
you're doing is exposing your.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh man, Joe, it's odor. Open the odor. F minus. Terrible book. No, I'm kidding. It was
well, you don't have to do any of that, but you should call it out and
it was a very good book. But yeah, that was pretty funny to see. I've seen
actually the Hybrid Helix series. It's one of those ones that everybody says they're great. You know, you look at them and you think space guy fighting dinosaurs, and you're like, it'll be fun, but you don't think it'll be good. But everybody's giving
I
reviews to
know,
it,
right?
and I'm
I
going to confess,
talked.
I have not read the Hybrid Helix series yet.
I
It's
know.
in my
It's
TBR.
I talked about that with Joe. I'm like, I mean, I didn't think it was gonna be bad, but I thought it would be like, it'd be a good palate cleanser read, and it is a good palate cleanser read. But there's also like, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Like if
and
you're a fan of
that's
like,
what I've gotten.
you're a fan of
That's
like,
actually one of the things that's really cool about the indie world, is just how good most of it is. You know, I had always been concerned that the indie space would be farm league, second tier, people that are working their way up, but they're not quite there yet. And the level of competition in indie is, whew, there's some good writers.
yeah,
Crystal Matar and her Brightwash. Oh,
I am reading the
read it.
Idaean trilogy by Philip Chase right now, and it's very
Philip
good.
Chase is very talented.
Now I will say, he might have a bit of an advantage. He spent 18 years working on those books, but I was very impressed with how efficiently they were constructed.
Yep.
I don't know if you've read them, but I will say I've only read two of them, and they're very good. Though I like the
Yeah.
first one more than the second one so far. But the second one has me really excited for the third one. I'm actually hoping to get to it this month after I finish one of either Hyperion or The City in the City, because I don't think I'll be
Yeah.
finishing
The
Marvel
feedback the
Spider-Man
feedback
anytime soon.
is that Chase pulls it all through. Again, I haven't read all of them. But you said it took 18 years to get there. That's actually, you just described the traditional challenge with sophomore efforts with writers is, getting your first book, you put years and years and years and years of effort into doing it and getting somebody to pay attention, and it gets lots of edits and attention. And then you publish it and you've got, okay, you got to put out the next one in 2 years, you know, and that's a really hard challenge. So
I suppose you have more
it's,
flexibility in indie, because like that's kind of
there
my
is.
that's kind of my struggle right now. Because I'm like, should I try indie out? Because like, my book, I I have, I'll put it this way, I'm very cynical about my chances of it getting any traction in a trad pub unless it's like Tor or something.
Well, so
Um, but
getting traction in trad has always been difficult,
well, I know,
and
yeah.
it continues to be so. And I have a question, and I don't know the answer. So anybody who watches this who has an answer, feel free to add the answer. I get the impression right now that one of the things you have to have to make it, big, is an audience. That you have to already have people that want to read your books, and
Oh,
people
for
who know who
sure,
you
yeah.
are, and followers. It's one of the reasons that like YouTubers do such a good job, is because they've gone out and built an audience.
I should
And then,
note that is also partly why I started this YouTube channel. I wanted to get some potential readers in, so it's not really a bait and switch, but it kind of is a bait and switch.
that's not bait and
I'm
switch.
gonna I'm
That's
gonna
just
do
marketing,
I'm
dude.
gonna I'm gonna do I'm still doing the YouTube content,
Okay,
but
so
I also want you to buy my books too when I put them out,
yeah,
whenever that'll
so
be.
so that there's no confusion, and so that we don't lose track of it, buy my books. Here they are.
He very
Here,
kindly sent them to me, so he
I
probably
did send them to
just
him, but they haven't
just
arrived yet.
just
So
ask him. He'll
in
send them to you.
April, I released. Let's see, right there.
Oh yeah.
So heirs to a flawed creation. It's actually behind my. There you go. Heirs to a flawed creation. This one is a collection of stories from. I have three worlds that I write in, and just so anybody who doesn't know it, I write a lot. I'm a fast writer, and I have
Mhm.
three worlds. One is science fiction, all based. It's called Near Earth, and it's all based on first context, first contact in the context of the Android awakening. So at
That
roughly the
sounds right
same
up my
time,
alley.
yeah,
I love AI. At
yeah.
least
So
in
at
science
the
fiction.
first time that we start running into alien species, we're also at the point where our androids and robots and that kind of thing have advanced enough that they're sentient. And so we've got the 2 complex challenges. So again, Heirs to a Flawed Creation is it's 7 stories that are about being an android. You know, it talks a lot about being the other and realizing that you're a person and all the rest of that. The next in that series, this one came out a month ago. Does that sit?
Yeah, I
Like
was
that?
gonna ask you about that because it's not. I mean, I've talked to Ryan Skeffington, who, funnily enough, is
Mm-hmm.
actually in Oklahoma as well. Um, he's a cool guy. Um,
Right.
but like, I don't. I mean, I'm sure they exist, and I'm sure there's more than just Ryan Skeffington and arguably Joe Byrne. I mean, though I would say Joe
Right.
Byrne writes science fantasy, but I'm not gonna go into that rabbit hole right. At least not right now. But
Right.
I haven't seen a lot of like science fiction indie science fiction. Again, I'm sure it exists, but
It exists. You just have to find the right the right
because
niche.
it seems like
You're
fantasy is
in
kind of
the
the big
fantasy
thing.
community, right? You just have to find the right um, elbow in the river, as it were. Um, so anyway, so Adrift in the Next Revolution is 11 stories that are human based. So you have the androids, you have the other stuff, but this is from the perspective of humans. And the reason it's 11 stories is for this one, you know, part of what I'm doing by doing indie publishing is I'm learning the process. I'm learning how to format and put it all together. And that's no comment on the quality. It is getting better, but that's the same way any author would get better. But I'm also figuring out how to put together a better product. And so I put together a frame story so that each of the stories is separated by interludes that feed into the last story. So it carries you all the way through. And they've both gotten a lot of positives. And then I released a fantasy, which, by the way, I love this cover.
That
Yeah, let
is
me
a
put
nice
it over.
cover. I'm looking at it on Amazon right now. So you got
Yeah.
some good covers. Whoever your artist is very talented, or she.
So this one is Vladimir Solnishko out of Georgia.
What a name.
And Georgia, the country, not the state.
God, yeah, I was about to say, oh crap, is he talking about the country?
Yeah, Georgia Solnishko is that guy, or Vladimir Solnishko is that guy. Very good. One of the things that I do, and I like to control because I'm, an indie author, is I give credit to all my artists. And the guy who's doing the science fiction is Felipe Braccioli, and he's out of Brazil. So I've got those 2 artists that work for me. I was very fortunate to get Vladimir to do my cover here. And I actually just got a cover for the book that I'll release later this year from him, and it's gorgeous.
So you're cranking them out right now. So yeah, that's.
I told you I write fast, and I've been writing for a long time.
You have that
So
Moorcock speed, I see.
I've got a good backlog of stories that I can pull from. But yeah, I've written 3 novels this year.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're faster than I am. It took me about 6 months to write the fantasy novel, and then I started a western, and it's kind of in limbo right now. I'm actually hoping to get back to it, but stuff just keeps getting in the way. And
the challenge is balancing it out. So, like I said, I've written 3 first drafts, not 3 final products, but 3 first drafts.
I imagine. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, about 500,000 words though. So that counts for something.
Are any of them to do with the stuff you've done already?
Yeah. So the 3 novels I've written this year are in this world, which is the stories of the Temra. The stories of the Temra. It's an epic fantasy that follows the core story. So this is one of the things you have to understand about the way I write. The core story, the central story, is about a father and son, and it's across the whole lifespan. So from conception to death of the son, and the first half of the series includes the father because it goes up to his death and then carries on. Excuse me. But it's a globe spanning chase across the world, fights against magic. It's full of monsters and creatures and witchers and wizards and sorcerers. Oh my. It's, it's got all of that. But the way that I develop my stories is whenever I have a character to make them deep and give depth, they get their own set of stories. So in the novels that I finished this year, I finished the first story, which is actually two stories combined. That is Eldred and Ghent, and it's the Seed of Temra, and it's the story of how Ghent came to be. And that's about 320,000 words long. I'm in an argument as to whether or not I should break it into two books.
I see.
And it sets up the whole world and the conflict between, King Harold and Eldred of Strum, and so the conflict that drives the center of the story. However, Eldred has, so in my world, the Magi. So the Magi is the broad term for people that have magic.
Does it have evil bald guy named Baez in it?
It does not, but that's
okay. Sorry.
But anyway, so the Magi are people who have magic, and then you get witches, mages, wizards, and sorcerers that have different levels of ability. But something that happens for the Magi as a people is some people are born with talents. So some people who are magical, you grow into it and you have to learn how to use it, and you go to school and all the rest of that stuff. But some people are just naturally, they have a skill, like one skill that it's just inbred. They don't learn it. They can't control it. It just happens. Well, one of the character tricks for Eldred, the father, is that he is naturally charismatic, and he has, so women fall in love with him, and men want to follow him. And it's magical. He doesn't control it.
Just through pure magnetism.
Pure magnetism, like animal magnetism. And the problem that creates for him is, while yes, he has lots of people interested in him, he can't trust anybody. Because how do you know if it's you or your magic? Does somebody actually like you? Can you trust them or not? Because they're going to want to do what you want to do anyway, because you have this effect on them. And then people are also scared of him because they're worried that they'll lose control. So that's a challenge for him. But throughout the long arc of his life, he has a bunch of relationships. And so, like, this story right here is about Sheena, who will be one of the women who has a relationship with Eldred. And she gets her own set of stories. And I'm, if I didn't talk to you tonight, I'm looking at my board up there. I've got 2 scenes to finish the book. And I'm about 100 words into the 49th scene. But that story is about a girl named Contalera.
Outline by chapter. That's interesting.
Well, it's not really by chapters; it's by scenes. So
I usually outline by chapter. I'm interested.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So I start a story with a thing. It's like there's a thing that I want to happen. I want to, whatever, go to the moon, find a girl, whatever, doesn't matter. So I start with that, and then I start writing a story to do it. But as I know where the end zone is, it's like you're going to take a trip from New York to Los Angeles. New York and Los Angeles, but what's going to happen in the middle, you don't really know. And so as it starts to flesh out, I've got a whiteboard here that I'll just start writing things that I want to happen. And the longer I write it, the more they finish into a checklist of things that need to happen. And they work out to be scenes. So
I kind of did that with the current project I'm working on, because I just couldn't hold it all in my head anymore. I had to kind of it was like a feverish. I had to. I mean, I'm still doing it chapter by chapter, but I'm kind of
Yeah. Well, what I discovered is when I outline, I never follow my outline. As a matter of fact, I never follow the scenes that I write either. And that's why it's on a whiteboard instead of in a big spreadsheet, and all the rest of that is because it's too much effort. But they kind of point me in a direction. And then what'll happen is, while I'm writing the scene, I just write what's supposed to happen, and then it doesn't match what's on the board, and I have to rewrite the board. But I still know where I'm going. It's like you get to Pecos and you turn right and go through New Mexico, or you go through the panhandle of Oklahoma instead of going, south through El Paso, and that kind of stuff happens while I'm writing. So anyway, Sheena is one of the love interests for Eldred years later. Her story, it's like her backstory that gets me there, so that when they meet,
Is she the
I
woman on
have,
the cover, I should ask?
yeah, this is Sheena.
Aha.
Yeah. And this is Sheena at about 17, 18 years old. Sorry about that.
No,
And then the book that I'm writing right now is a girl named, her common name is Kanta, but the name is Cantalira. And so it's her as a teenager, and she grows, and then all the stuff that happens to make her who she is. And I wrote another book called The Marked Man, which is the story of a guy named Tommy, known as Tommy the Killer, and then Tommy the Unburnt. But
Tommy the
he
Killer.
gets a whole trilogy.
I like that.
Um,
I don't mean to laugh,
he
but
starts out.
that's
He starts out as a kid, and then he runs into Eldred, and Eldred saves him, and gives him magic. He's not magical; he's a regular guy. But just suffice it to say, he was injured very badly. Eldred helped him, and then so now he's magically protected. But he's also connected to Eldred. And later in the stories, he is the leader of the wet work crowd, the black crowd.
oh,
The ones that go out there and murder people.
like assassins.
Or assassins, the dirty job guys.
Uh-huh.
So assassinations, yes. Thefts, yes. All the bad stuff. He runs that team, but it's how does he go from being a kid who got helped by Eldred to being the guy that runs his black ops.
So is he like a psycho, or is he just like a regular dude who just got in a bad
So he is the little brother of a gang leader. So his older brother runs a local gang, so kind of like organized crime. And they go through some events that put them on the wanted list, and they flee and they go to find Eldred. But as they go, Tommy's stories are the stories of the Marked Men is all about them getting from where they start to hooking up with Eldred's army. And then they don't actually ever fit. They're not magical. They don't do anything like that, but they are awful bastards.
I imagine they are.
And by the time you get to the show,
being an assassin, I imagine you have to be a very nice and ethical and very law-abiding citizen.
There's one scene that I wrote in the first book, and it's just a little teaser. But there's a scene where Tommy, as a young man, he went with his brother and the other guys to steal a wagon on the road, and his brother stands over him and puts the knife to a guy's throat, and then puts his hand on the back of his, the brother puts his hand on the back of Tommy's hand and pushes the knife through the guy's throat so that, his first kill. And so that's the kind of lifestyle that he's grown up in. So is he an awful bad person? Yes. Does he have a good heart and he takes care of his family? Yeah. So is he a murderer and a bad man? Yes, he is.
He's not a great. He's like he's a guy in a really bad situation. Is what you're getting at.
Yeah, there's a point at which you have to own your own decisions, and he does run a team of dirty doers. But so the thing is, in my storytelling, I like criminals. I'm fascinated by.
Well, yeah, we just talked about Liza Lockamora, so yeah, I guess you like criminals.
I'm fat. Well, I could tell stories about Aunt May going to the choir practice, but it's just not very interesting. So anyway, so that's the stories of the Temra, and then the next book that I'll release, the one that I just got the cover for, is in the urban fantasy realm, which is really the story of the supernatural underworld. And it's based on the family that owns the Seaward Island. And so it's the Seaward Island clan and all the stuff that they do, but it's about one crime family. It's a lot like The Godfather, except for with supernatural beings and the different species and the way they interact and the old world and the new world and all the rest of that stuff. So My son jokes that I can't tell a story without a mobster or a prostitute. So,
So, would you say then that you are a fan of noir, or are you more into
oh,
like
I
that
love
Agatha?
noir. I
Sorry, are you more like an Agatha Christie fan, or like?
oh, if I had to choose between Sin City and Death on the Nile, it's Sin City.
Oh, okay, all
Now,
right,
Death
all
in the
right.
Nile is great, but if I wrote it, it would have a real Sin City kind of feel
There
to
would
it.
be there would be prostitutes and murderers in it.
There would be prostitutes and murders for sure.
um,
Um,
well, of course, there
anyway, I
has to be
just
a
find them
murder.
fascinating and fun.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Agatha Christie is really good at what she does. I'm just not a fan of that style of mystery usually, with exceptions. I think that The Murder on the Orient Express is a fantastic book. Um,
Yep.
and I also like Knives Out, the movie. I really like that a lot, which is kind of a
Yep.
love letter to those kinds of mysteries. I don't know. I like noir a lot. It's like I love it.
Yeah, I like noir too. I'm a fan of noir. The truth is, I'm a fan of steampunk, and steampunk noir would be great, but I have to limit myself to my worlds, or else I won't be able to keep enough in my mind to work a day. You know, if I made enough money in writing that I didn't have to work, then I could put another world in there.
Um,
But
but I
as it
am
is,
I mean, I am curious about your near Earth stories because, again, I don't really. I mean, I'm sure they exist, and I do know they do exist because you and Ryan Skeffington are running around. Um, but like, so what is near Earth? Those is that like a cycle? Is it
so I called it near Earth because it is the humanity that we are sufficiently far enough in the future that we can travel space and we have androids that become sentient, but not enough that we've really broken the bounds of our solar system.
mm,
So we're working all through the solar system,
so like we're
and
not quite at Star Trek yet, but like we're like
we're
nearly
not
there.
quite at Star Trek yet. We have found a way to do so. We've got colony ships, generation ships, and the reason they're called generation ships is to get from one place to another. It's literally like 80, 90 years, 100 years. So you end out with people that leave
Ouch, that's a raw deal.
knowing that it's going to be their great grandchildren that actually arrive at the new location.
Ouch,
Um,
that's a raw
yeah,
deal.
well,
Go on a trip, you're
just so
never
that we're really
gonna.
clear, that's what the initial space travel. When we leave our system, the first people that leave our system will be on generation ships. They won't be. It won't be, going state to state or a couple of years. I mean, think about it. If you think about right now, even traveling at near the speed of light, you're years away from even inside of our solar system. Like Pluto is what, a billion, several billion miles away.
Mm-hmm.
It's really out there. I mean, like for what we're doing right now today, Mars, which is close, is still 5 years or more with nothing but spaceflight.
Damn.
It takes days to get to the moon, and that's in low Earth orbit. I mean, it's
Directions are weird.
so
Distance is weird.
that's the thing about space travel is you have to think about the fact that the distances are so vast that it's hard to imagine. So, as an example, in one of the stories, I talk about a space station and Titan, and they're literally 200,000 kilometers apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the kind of distances you're talking about. Anyway, so that's the reason it's called near Earth, is because it's outer space, but we're still in our solar system.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say more. Sorry. I was
No,
just
that's it.
like, I was just wondering, like, so is it like strictly science fiction?
Well, yeah, I mean, so just so that we're clear on my perspective, the only difference between science fiction and fantasy is that science fiction uses technology to solve problems and fantasy uses magic.
Fair
That's it.
enough.
They're the same thing, because let's face it, none of us know what the science is going to be. It's just how close we get to reality, right? So it is science fiction. I wouldn't describe what I write as hard science fiction like Andy Weir.
Well, sure.
I don't know enough to do that. I'm not that guy. I mean, like Ryan's an aerospace engineer, so he does know enough to do that. But for me, it is lighter science fiction. So it's science fiction. It's based on science, but more at a casual.
You won't
way.
get Asimov level, like, this is how it works, is what you're
Right,
getting at.
right. It'll be more big ideas and thoughts and less. Here's what's actually happening. Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess I'm interested because it's there are a bunch of I'm guessing there are a bunch of short stories right now.
It is a collection of short stories. I mean, it's 200,000 words of them.
Will there be like novels of them or?
Oh, there are novels of them.
Oh, you haven't published them yet?
They're not ready to publish, but so I've got a whole series. I've got 3 threads that hold together near Earth. So we have the people that are going out, we have the androids that are breaking free, and we've got the aliens that are finding us. And so all 3 have a story. And then they exist inside this world.
So
and
are they
all the short stories are
aliens?
characters.
Are they hostile aliens? Are they like Lovecraftian aliens that are too incomprehensible? Or
They're us from somewhere else.
Oh.
But the thing that you have to understand, so again, another quote that I can't place. Any society advanced enough to travel from one planet to another will be an aggressor.
Okay.
As an example, the English went to India to trade.
Uh-huh.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and yeah.
It was a trading journey. It was commercial.
Is that what you're getting at?
But that's what it means. Any society sufficiently advanced enough to go from one place to another, when it gets there, it's going to be an aggressor. Nobody's showing up at your door and saying, hey, here's some flowers. Would you like a piece of pie? They're showing up saying, I want that thing you have. Let's talk about how I get it. I'm either going to murder you and take it, or I'm going to give you something that I think is sufficiently low value to make it worth my time to take it. And what you saw in all of human history, 9 times out of 10, the first guy there took it by force.
All right. So
now the people that come later in history, they're on an easier path. The risks are lower. Their cost structure is better. They can start trading and being nice. But the first guy, the Dutch and the Portuguese in Japan, the English in India, the Dutch and the Germans in Africa, the Spanish and the Portuguese in South America, we were all bastards. I mean,
Well, that's a very grim view of things, but you're not entirely wrong.
Do you know any history that says I'm wrong?
Yeah, it's a good point. And you would think it would be easier just to tell them, hey, we're just here to trade. We're not, trying to kill anybody. But I guess people.
Well, you've also got
there is a part of human nature that likes to dominate, after all. So we're not always rational.
Even if we were really nice, think about it. When we showed up for the Native Americans, like 90% of them died of diseases we brought with us.
That's true. Yeah.
On
top of that, they were like, "What the hell are you doing here? Get off of our land. This is our land. Get out of here."
That's right. They were very suspect, and they were small populations. The Jamestown colony was the smartest one that was there. Is they just murdered us all. But we showed up. They murdered us all.
I've actually been to Jamestown. It's an interesting place.
Yeah, but the little guys in Plymouth Rock, I can't remember the names of the tribes, but we showed up and their answer was, hey, we're getting our butt kicked by our neighbors. We'll let you have this piece of the beach if you help us kick our neighbor's butt. So we went over with them and murdered their women and children and then had a place. I mean, that's That's the story of Plymouth Rock is
That's
a bunch
interesting.
of
That's interesting you bring that up because that's kind of because the fantasy novel or it's gonna be the first one of a series. That's actually kind of what it's about, except in a fantasy setting. Because like
sure,
cause like I don't see a lot of like what you would call colonial fantasy or
right.
whatever you want to call that. Like a lot of
So
it
so
is kind of
here's
content
the
to be
thing.
like pseudo medieval, which is fine. But I'm like, yeah, I want to do something that like where like people will be like, ooh, that's distinctive.
Okay, so here's the thing to remember when you think about colonialism. Um, whether it's fantasy or history or science fiction, you're talking about a small group of people with advanced technology showing up on the doorstep of unsuspecting peoples and saying, I want to stay. Not only do I want to stay, I want to stay and I want to cut down your forest to build me houses
And
so that you can't push me out.
we're gonna shoot some animals as well to.
We're going to take some of your animals. We're going to drink from your sacred pond. We're going to look at your daughters and think, ooh, they're kind of cute. And it's not even like malicious. We just show up. Like if somebody showed up and started camping in your front yard,
Yeah, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here.
the first thing you'd be like, who are you? It's great that you're here, but this is my property. Please leave. And if what they're doing is like, if you push me back out in the ocean, I'm going to die. So it's me or you. I like your house better. So let me just shoot you and then we'll live in your house. You know what I mean? So that's the nature of showing up on somebody's doorstep uninvited.
Yeah, that is the nature of colonialization, if that's a word.
Colonization. Yeah. And the thing that you also have to remember is like when we showed up when the Spanish showed up in Mexico, it's not like they showed up to a peaceful land with everybody happy and healthy with each other. We showed up to meet the Aztecs who just got through murdering 80,000 of the Olmecs to their god. I mean, we
Yeah,
walked into a fully armed, fully angry, fully ready to sacrifice us to
sure. I mean,
population. Now,
that's always the thing with stuff like this because I see a lot of like narratives nowadays where you know people are like, oh, the poor Native Americans were just sitting around minding their own business, and then those angry white people showed up and ruined everything. I'm like, well, hold on, that might be slight. There might be some truth to that. I'm not trying
sure.
to downplay horrible things that have happened. But it's not like the Native Americans were just sitting around having a good time. Like they were fighting each other and enslaving
Well,
each
it's
other as
it's a
well.
lot more like showing up to a family picnic where the two sides of the family are at each other's throat over Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State, and then showing up as Alabama and saying that's all great, but we'll beat both of you. You know,
Yeah.
and if the two of you could just get along long enough to kick us out, you'd be fine. But no, Alabama showed up and just wiped you both out. And so
That's a good analogy. Yeah, that's about because like I've read People's History of the United States. I'm like, great book, very good, but like it kind of follows that narrative where it's like, oh, look at them, they were all fine and dandy, and then those white people showed up, and you're just like,
so let's just say even if it was a perfectly happy, perfectly arranged environment, what you have is a land, and the context that we're speaking, of course, is in writing a book.
uh-huh.
But
I love
the
how this is kind of
historical
turned into a
context that we're
history
stealing
discussion.
from,
I love this.
yeah, the historical context that we're dealing with is you have a land that is settled, and all borders are settled by some constructive tension.
Uh-huh.
So let's say we show up to a land where you have tribe one and tribe two, or people one, people two, government one, government two, who have agreed on a boundary of a river, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's because the reason that rivers tend to be it is they're hard to cross.
And then
They're a
like these
natural
other
border. People
random
can
people
see
show
them.
up and
Right.
start violating that, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell? What are you doing?
Everything is in balance because the strength of the two tribes has agreed that this is the spot where they can be different. And then you plop us right in the middle. You know, we just changed the tension. And so there's going to be a period of fighting while everybody agrees on a new tension. And it resets to where there's 3 boundaries so that you have the 3 different societies. But it's just as likely that, you know, the people that were there, number 1, and the newcomers band together and wipe out the 3rd one so they can go back to a tension of 2.
Yeah. We always find some reason to go to war with each other.
Yep. And of course you have people and the individual, and they all look at each other. And yes, your daughter does look good. I mean, and those things happen.
But that's interesting because, you know, where my book series starts, there was this big war because they basically had kind of their version, if you've ever heard of it, of like King Philip's War, where it was basically a bunch of land disputes. And, you know, the Native Americans and the English people who showed up were like, hey, we don't want you on our land. Go away. And they had a fight over it. And that's kind of what happened. And now they're in this kind of tense peace where it's like, okay, you're going to be over in this part. We're going to be over here. We're not going to mess with each other. And we're going to try and get along.
Well, that's all of history. If you read all of history, the world, all the people sit on these tectonic lines where you got them pushing against each other, and war happens when they slip, and then they settle. That's all it is.
Well, you know, so I just think that's funny you brought that up because that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm trying to keep it more smaller scale because I'm pulling from more pulpy fantasy from back in the day. Before, you know,
all you have to do is don't talk about the whole society. Talk about a family. Talk about a block. Talk about 2 companies that are trying for the same business. You know, the difference between small and large is just scale. I know that's really stupid. That was a total Yogi Berraism.
Is more of a small town mystery. Is what I keep calling it, and not in like
well, there you go. All the fault lines are based on individual families or neighborhoods as opposed to whole countries.
Well, sure, yeah. Because I'm not.
That's all it is. It's just a shift of scope.
Well, yeah. It's you know, there's my version of the Native Americans, and they're just called natives because I just couldn't figure out a better name for them. And then there's like the regular, or not regular. That sounds bad. Then there's like the white people who are like, ooh, this new land. There's so much land here. We can just you know roll all over it and all that. And you know, now now by the time that the story starts, they have come to an agreement. They're like, okay, you go here, we go here. We don't cross or do anything stupid. We'll be fine. And it's very tense because, of course, there's still anger because of the previous conflict. But you know,
that's the way all this stuff happens. That's the nature of it. And don't worry about your naming conventions. If you think about it, the Normans wiped out the English. What does Norman mean? Northman.
Northman.
It's just the Viking.
So they just crammed the word together. That's interesting. That's neat. I didn't think of that.
Norman land.
Oh.
Viking.
Oh, hold on. My computer's being weird.
You back?
Yeah, sorry, my computer was being a little weird. I'll edit that out.
That's okay. So you can edit it out. We'll go back to the beginning. So if you think about what the Normans are and what Normandy is, when Ragnar Lothbrok and his brother Rollo went up the Seine and conquered Paris, and then they held land. So Rollo stayed and held land. The land he held is Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ragnar went over to England and did his stuff, and then his sons, Bjorn Ironsides and the Ivar the Boneless, and those guys, they conquered the north of England, which made the Danelaw. So half of England was controlled by the Vikings too, under the Danelaw. And then when the Normans conquered the English kings, it was basically the children of Rollo conquering the children of Ragnar.
Mm-hmm.
So the Vikings fought each other for France and England.
Well, tale as old as
And if you
time.
really want to get freaked out on this, if you study English history, there was a big period of English history where more of England was in France than England.
Yeah, because I've watched. Well, I watch a lot of history YouTube when I'm not
Right.
watching BookTube. And I've watched some stuff about medieval history, and yeah, apparently the main language in England was French for a long time.
It was the language of the wealthy, and that's actually where swear words come from. Swear words are just Danish words or Celtic words, and the proper English was French, which is just the rich people. And here's the one that'll really get you: is ancient Celts spoke Gaelic, which is Gaulish, which is French.
Yeah, that'll hurt my brain if I think too much about it.
Now, anyway, so all right, so let's see, what have we covered? Covered a little bit of your book. We've covered a little bit of my book. So the Nero series, I've sent you the books so that you can read them, and I also gave you audiobooks if you want. You get to hear my beautiful voice recorded on this very microphone. Read the stories if you wanted to do it that way, but do read them. Let me know what you think. I think you'll see that the second book is better organized, although like if you talk to Mike and Roe from Balding, Mike really liked Heirs to a Flawed Creation. He liked the androids, and Roe really liked Adrift. And so
I do like androids, so I may be more
well, you let me know.
I may be more privy to Heirs of a Flawed Creation, but we'll see.
Here's what I promise you: in either book, there will be criminals. Somebody's going to die, and there'll be a prostitute.
Oh, great! I mean, I don't know if I care as much about the prostitutes, but criminals
It's
and
okay.
murder. Oh man, I'm down for that.
Don't worry. Actually, in the Android stories, there's a murdered
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that
are there detectives in it too?
There are.
Awesome. Oh man, you're really
Actually, in the Android stories, there's two different stories that are specifically about detectives.
Oh man,
with strong noir feels to them.
Oh man, you're really getting me all excited.
You're gonna dig it. All right, so we got those. I'll tell you more about the urban fantasy world when we're a little closer, but really, we're probably, I'm going to knock on wood. I have not given a date for it, but it's my goal to release the next book in October. And the cover I'm very pleased with it.
I mean, you have some really good covers so far that I've seen. Yep. So yeah, I'm hoping it keeps up. But I did want to ask this because I like to ask this to a lot of authors. It's kind of the most obvious question to ask. But like, what writers kind of touched you or influenced you to write the way you write?
Well, so
which I'm sure there's a lot, but
there's a lot. So, in terms of who is my great American author, I love Hemingway. Now I know there are people there's a big debate, Steinbeck or Hemingway from that era, and there's people who like Steinbeck and there's people who like Hemingway, but I'm a Hemingway guy. And what I like about Hemingway is his brevity. He's very punchy and to the point. I think For Whom the Bell Tolls is one of the great novels, and if you haven't read it, you should.
I have not. I'm sadly have not read it. I have read The Old Man and the Sea though, and I love that book a lot.
Well, if you liked The Old Man and the Sea, I think For Whom a Bell Tolls. One, it's longer. It's got more story to it. It really good. You'll enjoy it. When I was in the 6th grade, I was not a good student. Well, I was not a good student a lot because I talk a lot.
Were you rowdy or did you just not care about the work? Because that was me.
I infinitely bored. Just
That's fair.
They couldn't keep my attention.
That was me as well.
I had a 6th grade English teacher who she was going to fail me. And what she said was, if you read this book and you read the whole thing, then I'll let you pass. And she handed me The Hobbit. The whole rest of the class was doing, I don't know, Catcher in the Rye or some stuff that we were supposed to read that was good for our brains. And she handed me The Hobbit. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll read it. Gobbled it up. And I came back to her and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. She said, great. So she handed me Terry Pratchett, Terry Brooks. And she handed me The Sword of Shannara. And I read the whole series. And then, I read The Lord of the Rings. And then I read some Terry Pratchett, and I thought that was funny. And I read Adams, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And, I just started gobbling stuff up. So right there, Hemingway and J.R.R. Tolkien. I am heavily influenced by George Martin and Rothfuss. Quentin Tarantino is a brilliant storyteller. I know that he doesn't write novels. Well, he does.
Well, he did write a novel for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My friend Jason just recently read that.
I got it right up there. So he did. That's why I say he did novelize that. But Quentin Tarantino is a brilliant storyteller. Really like Scott Lynch. I wouldn't say that Brandon Sanderson is an influence, but I enjoy his writing. It's
all right.
Consumable.
He's another. I have not read him yet. I don't know where to start. I'm actually thinking Mistborn. Maybe I'll start with that, but we'll see.
I think Mistborn's too simple. For me, I appreciate Mistborn because I read The Way of Kings. If I had started with Mistborn, I wouldn't be a Brandon Sanderson fan.
Okay.
Now, I do appreciate Mistborn, and I like it, and it appeals to me. But it's a simpler, younger story.
Yeah, whereas, if I recall right, it does aim for younger audiences.
Yeah. So I really like them. I can't remember his name. The guy that wrote Shane. Here's the significance. McMurtry, not McMurtry. Shame. Cowboy Story from the 40s and 50s.
Oh, the movie. Yeah, I've seen the movie of that.
Well, it's not a movie. It was a novel. Well, it was a novel. By our standards, it's a novella. It's only about 125 pages.
Oh, I was about to say, oh, yes. I've seen the movie version of that. I've not read the book.
It's very good story construction, simple telling. I did like Larry McMurtry with Lonesome Dove. Andy Weir is really good for science fiction. If you haven't read the James A. Corey and Leviathan Wakes, so the whole series that became The Expanse, the books are excellent. So you can definitely enjoy that. Davidson. Can't remember it. Oh, huge influence. Tom Clancy. I don't know if you love spy novels. I love spy novels.
I do enjoy the video games that Tom Clancy's imagination has spawned, but I'll admit.
So here's what I'll suggest for you. You don't have to read them all. For one, he writes books that are they're chunky. They're 1,000 pages back in the 80s was huge, and he wrote those all the time. But if you can read Without Remorse, which is the story of how John Clark became John Clark. It's late 70s. It's got a little bit of a noir feel with it. It's a spy novel. You dig it. It was good stuff.
I've read a couple of the Jack Ryan books, or I read I know I've read at least one or two.
Well, so Jack Ryan is Tom Clancy, although it would depend on where you got it. So if you read Hunt for Red October, which would have been the first of Jack Ryan stories.
Yeah, I read that and Clear and Present Danger. And
okay. Well, you've got the idea.
I find he's one of those authors kind of like Chuck Palahniuk. I know they're different in style, but just once you get their shtick, you're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I appreciate what they do, but I can be fine knowing. Or Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton, yeah. Michael Crichton's done some good work. Kind of Dan Brown's done some good work too. So for all of you out there, J.K. Rowling knows how to write. whatever you think about her as a person, the Harry Potter stories, got a whole generation to read. They're very well constructed, and
Oh,
if you
I love the
read
series. Yeah, it's a great series.
if you read Robert Galbraith, which is just J.K. Rowling, she's written a detective series that is excellent. The Cormoran Strike and Robin, can't remember Robin's last name, but E something.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's her noir series, isn't it?
it's a detective novel. I don't know. I wouldn't know if I wouldn't call it noir really, but it is hard bent detective. It's really really well done. And then the last one that I would call out for you is the Aubrey Maturin series that was through the 70s and 80s until the guy died, which is, gosh, I can't think of his name. Patrick O'Brien. So,
Isn't that the guy who inspired God damn it.
Master and Commander.
Well, yeah, that. But didn't he inspire Bernard Cornwell?
Yeah, yeah. Who's
What?
another great author? Bernard Cromwell is.
I have only read Sharp's Tiger from him, which I thought was really good. I quite enjoyed it.
This is a mask my son made when he was 11. Anyway, so yeah, there you go. I've you asked for a recommendation. I think I spouted out 20.
Well, I mean, I said some authors, so it counts.
Yep.
It's really yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, all right. So you're very widely read. That's always a good thing, I think.
And I've read lots of romance too. Believe it or not,
Yeah,
romance is something you can learn from because they do really reliable structure.
Yeah, I was going through your Goodreads. I looked you up on Goodreads, and I saw you had some erotica. That was interesting.
Actually, if you look at it, I've got a history there, and I also know a number of authors. So if you were looking on Goodreads, I probably know those authors, and then I read for them.
Oh,
Yeah. So, oh goodness, we should here. I'll include two for you. So, another one. If you don't know Stephen Brust,
I have heard of him.
oh, you should totally. It's the Jerrig stories. These are excellent, and they've got a little bit of a noir feel to them. You'd like it. So Stephen Brust is a really good choice, and then of course Rob Zelensky, or I think it's Rob Zelensky is it, but The Lord of Light is something you should read. Oh, for Pagliagucci with The Wind Up Girl.
Oh yeah, he
Ian
put out a book
McDonald, My Very
recently.
Bad Days.
He put out a book
Say
just
again?
he put out a book just recently called like Novola or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm actually reading the book that tied the Wind Up Girl for the
For the
Hugo
Hugo?
of that year, and that is The City in the City, which is
Yep.
I'm forgetting how well constructed that book is.
Yeah. There's some real talent out there if you're willing to get out there and get a look at it. All really good stuff.
I'm guessing you have read other indie authors. I'm actually just starting to dip my toes into the indie sphere.
Well, so if we want to go into the indie author and talk about really good indie that's right now, Crystal Matar, who wrote the Brightwash. It's Brightwash series, but the Legacy of the Brightwash, the something or other, the Brightwash. Anyway, Crystal Matar, very good. Really, really enjoyed her stuff. Jacqueline Hagen, who did the
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Wickwire
the
Watch, I
Wickwire
think.
Watch, the Spider Key, and
It seemed very Loch Lamora-y, and I'm like, ooh,
it is kind of.
I gotta give that a
It's
shot.
very, very well written. Um, Let me see. Let me see. Well, you could look at my Goodreads and see my 5 stars. I've been reading almost exclusively indie for the last year or so, and so I've read 60 or 70 books,
Oh
and
wow. Okay.
from indie, and yeah, there's some really good stuff out there. I wish I wasn't looking on the names. Of course, Mike Molman's stuff is very interesting. It's the Pratani stuff. So Grami, it's a it's a creative telling. You can tell what his bents are, and then of course the Rangers deck would be
He actually gave me some of
Rose
his
stuff.
books in a really nice, in a very nice package. I was like, wow, this is
The
really.
best packaging I've gotten from
I
anybody.
was I was really
The
sad
little map and
to like tear
the
that up,
wax
you know.
stamp, and he really did himself, and he made me feel chintzy on mine. But I feel like such a guilty man because I know all these authors' names, and as soon as we hang up, I'll be like, oh yeah, this guy and that guy and that guy. But yeah, those are the ones that really stand out to. Oh, Tori Tekken's Bloodstones.
Yeah, I actually have her
Um,
phased. I'm hoping to read it next month for my Halloween, where I just go nuts on horror and just read horror all month.
yeah,
So
Tori Tekken. The Bloodstones is the only thing I've read of hers, but it was really good. I enjoyed it.
I might save that one for next year, but I already have a couple other things I want to get to. Like I want to get to the Jade trilogy, and I'm gonna see if I can start Malazan, because a lot of people are like,
Oh,
Malazan is
see, you said Malazan, another one. So a lot of people have a hard time with Garden of the Moon, but I thought the Gardens of the Moon, woo, good book. I love that kind of complexity. So that's the kind of structure that makes me happy.
it's fair. Yeah, no, I mean it's kind of a love it or hate it kind of book from what I've noticed, because I haven't seen any books where I haven't seen any where people are like, yeah, it's fine.
Oh hell, and Joe Abercrombie.
Oh
I
man, I
love
love Abercrombie.
Joe Abercrombie. I love everything. I haven't picked up anything from Joe Abercrombie that I wasn't just like ah. Yeah, Logan Nine Fingers is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, he's great. He's probably my second favorite character behind Glocta, of course. 'Cause-
Sanda and Glocta I like, it, but the thing is, Sanda and Glocta I appreciate. Logan Nine Fingers I relate to.
so so do you black out and go on bloody nine sprees when you're like in danger?
I understand. I feel his heart. I've never blacked out and wiped everybody out, but I identify with his heart of a bad man.
I see. Yeah, no, he's interesting. Uh it's I think what's interesting about that first Law trilogy is I remember reading an interview with Abercrombie where he was like, I basically wanted to tell a fantasy story from the perspective of people who would probably be considered villains in another fantasy story, which I thought
It's
was
everything I write.
which I thought was quite fascinating. Um, and what I find interesting about Logan is that like he's almost attracted to the violence, but like he's
Can't help
ashamed.
it. Yeah,
He's
he's
ashamed that
drawn to it.
he's attracted to it.
Yeah, it follows him. I really like that.
Um, I, I've heard it be compared to an addiction, which is quite fat. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Um,
Sorry about that. My son is trying to tell me it's time to feed him, but that's okay. Um, so
as you do.
yeah, 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 yeah. So anyway, those are ones that I would recommend. I'll ask you a question.
All right.
Who do you think I should talk to? Like, so you could say, man, I am not gonna push my friends, punish my friends with you. But if you think there are some folks that I ought to talk to or that would enjoy talking to me, let me know because I'm available to talk to anybody.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm friends with Tori, but you could talk with Tori. She always likes talking to indie authors, though
Tori's a good one.
I'm sure she's probably in your crosshairs already.
Yep.
Um, I did see you talk to my friend Matt from Beard of Darkness, so I'll just mark that
Yeah.
off.
Matt Sorensen.
Um, I thought it was kind of hilarious when he picked up Paranacy because the character in that is also named Matt Sorensen. which is pretty funny. But anyway, oh man, my friend, this is a bit of a newer channel. His name is Logan. He's at a place called Dr. L Reads. He's a great guy. I actually just put up my most recent podcast I uploaded. Is him, so you can find his
Yeah,
channel.
yeah, I watched it.
He's very interesting. He mostly covers indie stuff as well, but he's also a yeah, I think he technically is a psychologist. But yeah, no, he's a good guy. I'm sure if you asked him, he'll talk to you.
He'll have a heyday with me. Yeah, absolutely. And so that you understand on that, one of the things that I think we should be doing in the indie community and the small creator community is feeding off each other, because the pie doesn't get smaller, it gets bigger. And
It sounds like something Andrew Meredith said on because I had a podcast with him at the beginning of the year. I've had podcasts with a lot of people.
yeah,
No, but yeah, that's funny you say that. My friend, but Andrew Meredith is another one. Him and his wife just started a show where they talk to people, and I mean, I don't know how you get on that. I try. My thing is, like, I'm kind of trying to like I want to let people know that I would like to come on their shows, but I don't want to be like that guy who's like really presumptuous, you know?
okay. So anybody who's watching the show right now, Britton is writing a book and he's building a channel, so he would love to spend some time with you. So
And
Matt
not just for
and Mike
promotion.
and
I'd like
Ro
to just
and
hang out with people, you know? That's why I do this show anyway. So there you go.
I think that's great. So anybody out there who watches this, who's watching it now or will watch it later, Britton would love to come onto your show and talk about what he's doing. I would do the same, the way that you get your message out there. You know, feed the system, it'll feed you. So there you go. You didn't have to be that guy. I was that guy for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will say one thing though. I have to challenge you because we were talking the other day on on Twitter about Terminator. Because I was like, Terminator's a horror movie, and you were like, no, it's a thriller. So let me just ask you this: how is it? Because like the movie is about this thing that gets sent back in time. You can't reason with it. You can't appeal to emotion. You can't do anything with it, and all it wants to do is kill you. How is that not a horror movie? I just want to know.
It's a thriller with horror elements.
Oh, okay.
So this is the thing about genre and everything else. You can have any kind of story that is scary, but the significance of a horror story, just so like, you know, they have rules. So like a romance, you have to have people that aren't together that end with a happily ever after or a happy for now. It's a rule. As long as you get the story is about the romance and it ends with a happy ever after or a happy for now, it's a romance. The thing about science fiction is if you write a story where the technology is the driving solution, so it's all about the world and the environment and the technology makes things happen, you've written a science fiction. And if you write a fantasy where you build a world and it's magical creatures or magic that make things happen, you've written a fantasy. And so when you think about horror, if you write a story where the purpose of the story is to cause the reader or the viewer to be frightened, it's a horror. But the thing about Terminator is they were exploring the possibilities of time travel, which is a science fiction.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying
it is a science fiction thriller with horror elements.
Which, yeah, I'll give you that, and also action elements, because like, you know, there's a lot of like.
Well, so think about Friday the 13th. We can all agree Friday the 13th is a horror show, right?
Sure. Yeah. I'll keep it simple.
In Friday the 13th, we're not exploring family relationships. We're not exploring what it is to be a teenager. We're not exploring what it is to go camping in the woods. We're not exploring what it's like to be near a lake. We're not there's none of what we're doing is anything except for an unstoppable dead guy out to kill teenagers. You know, it serves only two purposes: get teenage girls naked and murder them. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all Friday the 13th does. Halloween, unstoppable force, chasing teenagers. We don't learn anything about anything new. It's just gonna murder some people. Friday the 13th, not Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger comes out of your dreams to make you, you know, he comes to get you.
See, it's like dark
There's nothing else
fantasy,
in the story.
maybe. Dark fantasy
Yeah.
horror, if that's a thing.
Yes, but the thing is, it's the story isn't about the dream world. The story is about surviving the monster.
Oh, yeah.
So what we were telling
so what would you
is,
say The Thing is? Because The Thing is my favorite horror movie. So, like, what would you say The Thing is?
the thing is horror.
Oh, okay. I would say science fiction horror, but yeah, horror, yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's horror with science fiction as opposed to science fiction with horror.
Okay.
Because if the story was about aliens, then the thing would be science fiction that was scary. But the story is about surviving a thing that you can't control that happens to be an alien.
All right.
That's the reason that Alien and Aliens are thrillers and not horror movies. In the original Alien is absolutely a science fiction, but it's absolutely a horror because the structure of it is you're trapped in a box with a monster.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just,
I hear you.
We just described the box as a science fiction setting, but in the end, you're trapped in a box with a monster. How do you survive?
Yeah, you know, I've been kind of on a rewatch spree of some of my favorite science fiction movies from the 80s, so yeah. Because I watched Alien Romulus recently, which was actually a pretty good movie, I thought.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. I know that some people gave it crap, but I liked it.
So I'm like, I'm going to watch Alien again. And I watched Alien again. I'm like, wow, this is a masterpiece. And I watched,
Right.
And then I watched Aliens, and I'm like, pretty good. Not as good as the first one. You can disagree with me.
Well, it was different. Because Alien, horror. Aliens, thriller.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I was going to say action movie, but yeah, thriller, same thing.
The difference between a thriller and an action is in a thriller, there's life and death. In an action, there's an objective.
All right. Well, they have an objective in the movie. You get the hell out of there.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is in action adventure, in action adventure, the objective is not survival, it's a goal.
Oh, okay.
Get from A to B, win a thing. You know, that's action adventure.
Watch
Thriller,
Terminator.
You have to survive in a chase. And that's how come Terminator is a thriller with horror elements as opposed to...
Then I watched Terminator. I just somehow got into Terminator again. So I'm like, Terminator, great film. Terminator 2, also a great film, but I kind of prefer the first one.
It made the same jump, though. Alien.
Well, yeah. It's because it's made by the same guy. Like, come on.
Anyway, there you go.
That's probably why it's the same leap. It's made by the same dude.
Right.
And then I watched Zodiac the other night because, like, I'm like,
Zodiac.
I'm like, I want to watch a crime movie. Why not?
I love crime movies.
Though, Zodiac kind of defies. What do you call it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Crime / character study / true crime, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I watched him, like, damn, he should make a Elroy adaptation at some point. David Fincher should. Because I think he would do very well. But, you know. I was even tweeting about it the other night. I hope you've read James Ellroy. If you like noir, I hope you've read James Ellroy. I hope... Have you read James Ellroy?
I don't remember the name. What's the novel?
He wrote L.A. Confidential.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It was made into a movie, which is very good.
Which, it was also a good movie, yeah.
Kind of a miracle.
And Black Dahlia and all that stuff. Got it.
Kind of a miracle because the novel is kind of convoluted, admittedly, but it's still really good. It's a Yeah, no. Just been on a weird rewatch spree recently. Like I watched, because Alien Romulus set me on the path, and I'm like, ah,
Gets you every time.
there was a lot of those like, just in the late '70s and early '80s. There was like this string of like really gritty, like science fiction movies for whatever reason.
Well, they hit the button just right. They were the mix between high dollar and low dollar, and they worked out. Because if you look at all the first ones, they were basically done on a set with a small group of people that were unknowns.
Well, yeah,
So,
and also Star Wars has a lot to probably thank, because like if Star Wars hadn't have blown up, we probably wouldn't have
and
gotten
Blade Runner.
Aliens and Blade Runner. Yes, though
Yep.
Alien came out before Blade Runner though.
Um, true. What did it?
Anyway,
Blade Runner was 79, was it?
no, that's Alien. Alien '79.
Oh, okay.
Um, which I am also a big fan of. Blade Runner actually introduced me to Philip K. Dick. I'm a big Philip K. Dick fan. I love his
Philip K.
work.
Dick is, and William Gibson too.
I still need to read him.
You haven't read
I
William?
know. I should just give my sci-fi cred card immediately. Uh,
All right. Well, you need to read Neuromancer because that's the cyberpunk genre. The whole cyberpunk genre is
um,
Neuromancer. And you need to read Lord of Light so that you get one of the things is if you read some of this older science fiction stuff, you'll all of a sudden see where everybody got, where everybody grounded.
yeah, like I haven't read Snow Crash. I'm kind of nervous to read Snow Crash. I've heard it's really weird, but I digress.
I have not read Snow Crash either, so I can't comment.
Fair enough. Um, yeah, I actually, it's a good, I am reading though right now. Speaking of science fiction, I am reading Hyperion, which is another. Everyone and your grandma told me to go read it, and I'm liking it
That's
so
right.
far.
That's right. You should read Ian McDonald too. I think.
My friend
What is it?
Raph
Considering
loves.
Phoebus.
My friend Raph loves Ian McDonald. He will most likely love that you just brought him up if he's gotten this far.
Super talented. Super talented.
Um, I am intrigued by his Lunar trilogy because it's sort of a counterweight to The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which is one of my favorite science fiction novels. So,
Have you read Considering Phoebus?
no, I want to though because
It's a
Ian
beast, but it's excellent.
Ian M. Banks I have heard is very good.
See?
There's a guy called Damian Walter who actually just recently made a video called Space Hippies talking about that series, which is like an hour and a half.
Excellent. Have you read Guy Gabriel K? I can't even say it.
I have not,
Guy
but I do want to
Gabriel K.
I do want to
Read
try.
Zagana. One of the best books ever written.
I do want to try like Tagana or the Lions of Al Assad. I think is what it's called. Let me look it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Read Tagana. Tagana is the one that you should read for him. Um, and actually, if you want to read another indie that did really well, Evans, Chris Evans, Richard Evans, whatever, the Rage of Dragons,
Oh yes,
African
I
inspired.
have that book over here. I read Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I'm actually reading its sequel right now. I'm kind of nervous that because I love that book so much, it's gonna ruin Rage of Dragons for me. But we'll see.
Well, Rage of Dragons was pretty good.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping it's good, but let me yeah. I mean, Tagana has pretty good reviews on.
Tagana is excellent. It's a very good book.
Yeah. Oh, geez. What fantasy have I read? Well, I've read the Baslag books, which
I haven't read this.
I'm a big fan of those. Well, except for the third one. I feel the third one, China Mieville got a little too cute with the concepts. But those first two books are
China
excellent.
Mieville, Perdido Street Station.
Yes. And it's called the Dark Star trilogy, but there's only two books out right now. I'm reading the second one, so I like that series a lot. What are some other fantasy? Well, I've read The First Law, of course, and Game of Thrones. I'm a big fan of both those
Yep.
series.
First Law, Game of Thrones, also good.
Which is kind of funny. I think First Law is even darker than Game of Thrones is. Because, like, at least in Game of Thrones, there's, like, a moral universe. Like, in First Law, like, it's just terrible. Like,
Nah, nah. I don't. They're different slices, but they're the same.
yeah, I'll give you that. Though I would say my favorite fantasy novel of all time is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. So there you go.
Neil Gaiman has done some really good stuff. He's a talented cat. Um, yeah, yeah, I like him. We've talked about Terry Pratchett.
I was actually gonna start Guards this year, but my reading has been really slow. So I'm like, next
What's
year,
funny is my favorite of all the Terry Pratchett's is Small Gods, and I know that it's not for everybody, but I giggled my way through that whole thing. I loved it.
but next year, mark my words, people, or at least 2025. Mark my words, people. Uh, I'll get to Guards. You can
Okay.
hold me to that. And then, because like a lot of these big fantasy series, I try to go in with a healthy dose of skepticism. Um,
Nah.
because I'm like,
So here's the thing. Oh, sorry about that. Just dropped my microphone. Okay. Um, the thing that you have to take with anything, what you write, what other people write, is you don't have to please everybody. You just have to please your people. And there's a story for everybody. So if you
I
don't
also
like
like,
something, you haven't done anything stupid.
I
It's
also
it's
like,
fine. It's good.
I also like, older sword and sorcery. So like, I really like Conan, the original Robert E. Howard stories. For
Yep.
anyone interested, get the Del Rey editions because those are Robert E. Howard as he wrote them.
Right.
Um, I like Elric a lot. I think Moorcock
I think
I like
Elric and
Moorcock.
Melniboné was important, but I think it's dated.
Sure, that's fair. I mean, I like the weirdness of it personally. I just like he just freaking goes for it. But while kind of tilting that sword and sorcery uh,
Yep.
bent on its ear a little bit. Um, I don't know if I'd call it his best work. Uh, I also like Fritz Leiber, his Fafhrd and the Grey Mauser. I really enjoy, which is why I like Gentleman Bastard so much. Um, it's sort of a modern take on that kind of story.
Right. Right.
Which I'll admit they're great, but they are a little dated as well. So it was written in the '60s, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I mean, well,
I
I mean, anything written in the 50s and 60s was affected by that period in time. And one of the things that was going on is the sophistication that editors were applying to both genres, science fiction and fantasy, was limited. Um, some of the really serious editors didn't take it seriously. Uh, I think that was a mistake, but that's okay.
I've kind of grown to despise the people having to clarify every 5 minutes that oh, this was a different time. I'm like, yeah, I freaking know that. All right, I don't like. I just want to read the damn story. I want to know what you think. Don't tell me.
Oh, I'm not worried about that. What I'm
No, I'm not
calling out
saying
is
you're
just,
doing that. I'm just saying
yeah,
people do that, and it freaking annoys me now. Like
I
back then,
think we're
I was
past
more
the.
patient with it, but now I'm just annoyed with it. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. H.P. Lovecraft was racist. I don't think he's that good of a writer anyway, but that's another
I
point
think he's
entirely.
weird. H.P. Lovecraft is not my thing. And here's my challenge. So, like in the Mountains of Madness, I'm going to piss off all the H.P. Lovecraft people. I'm sorry, but in the Mountains of Madness, the whole story is, ooh, that's so scary. You should be scared. This is scary. The monster is bigger and scarier than anything that's scary. Woo! I, I,
Yeah,
I just had these
that's a
vibes of my
fair take.
granddad trying to make me scared.
That's a fair take. It's a lot of it is that story is just them walking around looking at hieroglyphics of weird alien
Hieroglyphics and tall mountains, and it was cold.
and weird boogaloo going on. Which I'm like,
Yeah.
all right.
So
Which that's a lot of his stories. I won't. I'm not getting into that. But
Yeah, and I will confess, cosmic horror is not my center mass. I can appreciate it, but it's not some cosmic horror is not the thing I go looking for.
and that's fair. I mean, I like. I guess my gripe with Lovecraft is cosmic horror was a thing before Lovecraft. He merely popularized it, and I'm kind of. It's kind of. He's kind of the Frank Miller of cosmic
Well,
horror.
that's
He
okay. Blues was a thing before Elvis Presley, but
he did some really cool stuff in the genre, and everyone thinks he did it first. You know, and it kind of irritates me a little bit, but that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
everybody remembers the victor.
I would probably tell someone Ambrose Bierce and Edgar Allan Poe write freaking circles around Lovecraft, but don't listen to me.
All things that are true, but it's one of those things. If you capture the market, you capture the market.
Yeah,
That's why
no,
Coke and Pepsi fought for every country, because whoever got there first got the country.
yeah, my friend Josh is always telling me to, like you can't hate on a hit, and I've tried to,
So that is 100% true.
I've tried to live by that, but it's sometimes really hard because I get real frustrated with some books that get really popular.
So here's the thing that you have to take, or at least what I tell myself for me.
Or if something gets popular, I get irritated by the countless people who misinterpret it. I'll put it that way.
Well, there's definitely that. What I would say about things that are popular, doesn't matter whether they're good. Doesn't matter. They're popular. What you should take from that is you should look at them and try and understand why they're popular. What was the magic of their particular recipe? Why is it so good? Not because sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's knowing the right people. For instance, if you go to the museum and you look at the paintings on the wall, and they're good paintings, and the people are very talented, but you know how those paintings got on the wall? They belonged to a rich guy.
Yeah.
The best painting that was ever painted rotted in a dumpster somewhere because nobody loved it.
I wouldn't be shocked if you and Mike Molman got along. You both have a very no nonsense kind of attitude towards things.
Mike Molman and I do get along. So
No, it's and look, I get it. Got to give credit where credit's due. Like, look, I think that Batman Year One is one of the greatest Batman comics that has ever been put to print. That
Okay.
said, I think Denny O'Neil deserves some credit for bringing Batman back, or deserves more credit, because like the hardcore Batman fans are pretty much well aware that like Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams did some great work bringing Batman back.
Yep.
Before Frank Miller showed up. But Frank Miller did Dark Knight Returns in Year One, so that blew up, and people give him the credit. And also, he's an interesting man, we'll say.
It always helps to have a personality that makes you one worth watching.
Though I do think he has mellowed out over the years.
Everybody mellows over the years.
Like when I read that he said he regretted the Terror, I'm like, okay, yeah, I think he's calmed down a little bit. Oh man, what a fall from grace that Frank Miller. Anyway, yeah, no, it's but yeah, I just get kind of frustrated a little bit, and I'm like, okay, if you like H.P. Lovecraft that much, one, go read Edgar Allan Poe, and don't tell me, it's overwritten, because I've had friends who like Lovecraft who've unironically told me that, and I'm like, okay, Poe compared to Lovecraft is not that bad, so shut your face.
Poe is actually a genius. So.
Oh, he's my favorite short story writer. So I mean, you're speaking to the choir here.
Yeah, that's also, okay. Read my books, and then I'll be.
Yeah, no, and like read Ambrose Bierce. Here's some other horror stuff. Read that, and then come back to me. If you still like Lovecraft, fine, great. But he is not the best of the best.
Poe's the real deal.
And even Lovecraft,
Poe is
and I'll
real.
admit, even Lovecraft would admit to that because he was a big Poe fan.
Yep. Yep.
But it's yeah. I won't. That's another video for another time.
Another video for another time.
My complicated relationship with H.P. Lovecraft's work, and no, it is not just because of the racism. Before people start getting after me about that, because look, racism's bad, and I think most of us would admit that it's bad. But that's not my gripe mainly with H.P. Lovecraft's work.
Yeah.
I mean, if that is your main gripe, totally understandable. I'm fine. Like, if you are like, this guy's a racist asshole, I don't want to fucking read it. Go right ahead. That's fine. I'm not going to stop you.
That's an acceptable answer.
That's fine. But that's not my issue with his work, mainly.
No, my issue with H.P. Lovecraft is you're going to be scared.
Well, yeah, there's that, and then
that's also a period of the time, because if you look at all the writing at that period of time, that's the way they told stories. I don't jive with that.
I don't like the worldview in his books and his work. Not racism.
I'm not well enough read in what he has to say to have an opinion.
Not talking about the racism, so don't jump on me about that. The idea that we'll see these weird alien things and just fucking, I don't know, die of angst.
That's the woo scare stuff.
That is not how human beings work, for one thing.
No, we buckle in and fight against everything.
Now, I understand that there are things out there that are probably incomprehensible. But just because you're a neurotic guy from Rhode Island does not mean everyone else is just going to buckle up and die because some weird alien boogaloo shows up that you don't understand.
Yep. The way that it's going to happen, aliens will show up.
Note, I am simplifying a lot, but yeah, I'm not a Lovecraft fan.
Yeah.
There's a couple of his stories I like, but a couple of his collections I have because there's authors I like who've done forewords to them, so I buy them just for that.
My opinion of when aliens show up, it'll be thirds. A third of us will try and kill it, a third of us will try and have sex with it, and a third of us will try and sell it something. That's human nature.
It's funny because that sadly that probably is what's gonna happen.
Just my observation. I actually thought that one of the best scenes from Independence Day is the girl standing on top of the building with the sign that says, "You can park your spaceship in me. Take me with you." Those will definitely be there. Guaranteed. Doesn't matter what they're like.
Oh man, my thought is like either we're gonna fight it or we're gonna try to make friends with it, or as you said, we're gonna try and have sex with it. So I don't know. It's a weird world we live in.
It's the way we are, and we'll get in a fight with each other for not having the right answer.
And there are good ways to do cosmic horror. Like I think The Thing is a great cosmic horror story because they're dealing with this thing they don't understand.
Good. Although it really was, I mean, it's another version of locked in a box with a monster.
Well, yeah. Sure. And also, there's the movie. So, movies are different than books, after all.
Well, my friend, we are pushing 2 hours, and I did have a son tell me I needed to feed him.
I was about to say I need to eat dinner myself, but man, time flew. I have to say, this has been fun.
It was good. I'm always happy to talk, and I'm happy to come back and talk more. I am. And if next time we know we're going to go longer than 2 hours, I will. I'll just make arrangements for everybody else to have dinner, and we can go as long as you want.
Fair enough. Though I do like having authors on if I am in contact with them. So if and when I get around to reading one of your books, I may have you back on in the future.
Delighted. This one gives you it's this one.
It's
that big.
It's pretty
67
short.
pages, I think.
That's a short
It will
story.
give you a sense of my style of writing. One of the things that you'll pick up is everything I write, everything reads fast.
Fair
There's
enough.
some things you pick up and it's like you slog through. I did those, like in Microsoft Word, you can say, give me the statistics. It says that I get like a 95 or a 94% readable and like a 2.8, so a second grade level on everything I write. And I'm not offended by that because I write simple, easy to follow, easy to read. I cover adult concepts, but it's pretty quick.
Um,
Guaranteed to be sex and violence, just because that's what I do. Um,
very
an
lowbrow.
interesting.
I hear you. I hear you.
Say again.
I said very lowbrow. I hear you. I was being facetious.
All that stuff can be highbrow too.
That's true. Like I said, I was being
Um,
facetious.
no, I get you. I get you.
No,
But it's an easy read. Um, although if you want the science fiction, actually read the first story in Heirs to a Flawed Creation. It too is short. It's actually shorter than this. It's probably only about 50 pages. Um, but it'll be a real quick read. You'll know what I write. And it'll also set the tone for the novel or for the collection because I try in collections, I try and put a hard story in the front. That way, if I'm going to offend anybody, I get it out of the way and they can put the book down and be done with it. So there you go.
all
The
right.
first story in that collection is The Android Assassin.
Okay. So not 3 laws compliant.
Oh, no. No, my androids don't have any no Isaac Asimov direction with them.
All right. But before we go, as I like to do before I let everyone go, if you have social media, feel free to share
You
it.
can find me on Twitter. I'm also on a number of the Discord channels. I'm easy to get a hold of. If you have any questions,
I
please
can
reach out.
confirm
I'll
he
do
is
my
very
best to
easy to
answer.
get a hold of.
Say again?
I said I can confirm he is pretty easy to get a hold of.
Well, yeah, and I make my living at a computer, so I'm sitting here almost all day. I work at a computer during the day. I write at night. Um, I see things come in. I respond pretty quick.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I know I did.
I enjoyed the conversation too. Thank you for having me on.
Until
And
next time.
buy my book.
Oh yeah, indeed.
Buy all three of them.
Indeed. Until next time. Hope you guys enjoyed
All right.
this.
Thanks, guys.